Okay.
What up, guys? It's Shaheen from Strength Science, breathing in that beautiful elemental oxygen, O2. Today we're going to be taking you through our upper and lower body dynamic warm-ups. Let's get it. What up, world? We out here in the nature. So first of all, the purpose of a warm-up is to minimize the risk of injury, increase work capacity, and maximize muscular performance during your working sets. Dynamic warm-ups, more than static stretching, which can actually decrease performance if done directly prior to your workouts, induce blood flow throughout the body, and in specific the muscles that will be used during the workout, as well as increase core temperature, which induce those previously stated benefits. Ultimately, the pursuit of elite strength is a marathon and not a sprint. It takes years of disciplined work ethic and scientifically validated training methodologies. Dynamic warm-ups can increase the probability that you'll perform optimally for longer periods of time, and that obviously just increases your longevity in the sport and the amount of time that you can lift weights. And who knows, maybe you could be the next King Kunta of the strength and powerlifting world. So I begin both my upper and lower body workout days with 300 to 500 meters on the rowing machine, followed by 3 to 5 minutes on the stationary bike, with the ultimate purpose being to increase my core temperature and promote blood flow throughout my body. Note that the goal of these cardiovascular exercises is not to induce non-functional fatigue. We simply want to break a sweat and spend the majority of the warm-up activating muscles that will be used during the workout, so that then the fatigue that we induce is functional. So for our first upper body movement pattern, we begin with band pull-aparts in the lateral plane, which activates the upper back and rear deltoids that are supplementary stabilizing muscles in the bench press. Note that I tend to do 10 reps per warm-up exercise. Just understand that the quantity of reps here is completely irrelevant. We are unconcerned with fatigue in the warm-up, and our main purpose is feeling the activation and blood flow to the targeted muscles. Next up, we have a band dislocation here, where I'm keeping tension on both sides of the band, where it is initially parallel to the ground, and I'm moving in circles from front to back. This movement loosens tension up in the upper pec and shoulder tie-in, and induces a more fluid and pain-free bench press motion. And here we got a movement that kind of mimics the band pull-aparts, only at a higher angle of elevation, to focus more specifically on rear delta activation, which will ultimately provide more stability and efficient force transfer into the bar during the bench press. This exercise here targets the rotator cuff for improved shoulder health and mobility. The rotator cuff muscles are the foundation of stability in the shoulder complex and are very easily inflamed from overuse or damage from trauma, right? And strengthening them through this exercise can decrease the chance of injury through years of high frequency or high volume bench pressing and upper body movements, primarily involving pushing motions. And here we have a barbell movement complex where I'm doing 10 reps of rows, bent over rows, overhead press, Romanian deadlifts, good mornings, and finally squats. I perform these movement patterns prior to my upper body and lower body workout days. The main purpose here is to activate muscles that are going to be used in your working sets, but also just generally induce blood flow throughout the body, increase your core temperature, and we're using an empty bar obviously because we don't want to induce any unnecessary fatigue. Save the fatigue for the working sets. And now we will discuss the lower body dynamic warm-up. I begin with glute kickbacks to induce blood flow and to activate my glutes, a primary generator force in the squat and deadlift. Also, considering the fact that I low bar squat and sumo deadlift, which are two more glute dominant exercises, glute activation has been crucial for an efficient movement pattern and force transfer in my case. So this movement here, I believe, is known as the cat camel, essentially just an alteration between a thoracic spine and lat stretch and contraction. It goes great before squats and deadlifts. Here we have the traditional hip thrust, keeping our pelvis off the ground, even in the starting position, where we primarily activate the glutes and hamstrings, again, primary muscles that need to be efficiently recruited in the squat and deadlift. So this exercise is known as the leg swing, a dynamic stretch of the hip flexors, extensors, adductors, and abductors. This movement will help the hips open up as you descend into the squat and allow for a more comfortable sumo pulling position where the knees don't really cave inward. Note that I'm referencing the sumo in specific as it is more demanding of lower body mobility in comparison to the conventional pull. And so here we have some hollow rocks, which is an exercise that activates the core to recruit higher levels of motor unit activity, which will ultimately help you produce and transfer forces more efficiently during training. Note that this movement is not mandatory, as prior movements that took the hips through fuller ranges of motion are sufficient enough to adequately activate the core. Here are some shoulder rolls, essentially just mobilizing my shoulders and traps for squats in specific to get my shoulders easily under the bar so they're not limited by previous tightness from upper body workouts. And here we are using a hip circle, shout out to Mark Bell and Slingshot, to activate the hip abductors and external rotators to prevent the knees from caving inward during the squat and deadlift. And here we're working through different planes of motion. This is essentially another form of the hip circle to activate the hip abductors and external rotators to achieve the same goals for those of you who don't have a hip circle available. Oh.